Good evening, everyone. Today we're going to be talking about 2.06 quadratic formula, something that you are familiar with. You are going to write this down in your notes. So this comes from example 1 in the packet, which says basically to find the solutions to x squared plus 4x plus 2. So take a moment and make sure that you copy this down into your notebook. Now, if I'm moving along too fast, maybe hopefully somebody will be able to pause and allow you to catch up. But here's what we got to think about. If we're going to solve this, what we talked about yesterday is factoring this. And what we would want to do is we would want to find factors of 2 that also add to give us 4. Well, the only factors of 2 that I can think of are 2 and 1. And in no way can that add to give us 4. So factoring is out of the question in this scenario. And that's why we need to use something like the quadratic formula. So since there are no factors of 2 that add to get 4, we should use the quadratic formula. And if you don't remember the quadratic formula, let me reveal it for you. It's x equals negative b plus or minus b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. I'll pause here, or your teacher can pause here until you have these examples written down. Now what I've done is I've annotated our A, B, and C terms, which are things that you remember from years past, A, B, and C. And those things are just going to get plugged into our formula wherever we see an A, a B, and a C. And so going through this process, the first step is just plugging in. And when we plug in here, we're going to make sure that we have to follow our order of operations. So we plug in all of our numbers, and we make sure that we're going to solve our exponents first. Then we're going to do our multiplication in here before we can subtract anything or take the square root. Now, as we continue to evaluate this, we can see that the inside turns into, well, we have 16 from the 4 squared, and we have a negative 8 coming from the 4 times the 1 times the 2. We can keep that 2 on the bottom, and we eventually will reduce that to get an 8 on the inside from that 16 minus 8. Now, sometimes this will be enough to be the final answer. But in this scenario, if we look back into our packet, none of the multiple choice options include this as our answer. Now, we have to have the confidence to know we didn't do anything incorrectly, but perhaps we're just stopping a little bit short here. And so where this stops short is actually, if I were to highlight it, would be at this negative 8. Radical 8. And this radical 8 can actually be reduced. And there's a way to actually reduce radicals or square roots. So you can actually see that I kind of wrote this off to the side as an annotation, that this square root can be reduced. Now, when we reduce square roots, it has to follow a certain set of procedures. Notably, we have to look for factors of 8 where one of those factors is a perfect square. So in this case, it's beautiful because 8 can be divided by 4. And since 4 is a perfect square, we're going to use that, and we're going to take that square root of 4 and turn it into a regular 2. Notice how that's 4 times 2, and this 2 is not a perfect square. That's okay, only one of them needs to be. So notice how that thing that wasn't the perfect square stayed inside the radical, and whatever was a perfect square, well, we take the square root of that. So that radical 8 actually reduces down into 2 radical 2. If you plug both of those in the calculator, 2 radical 2 or radical 8, you'd get the same thing. And so now we're going to see how that can help us reduce this problem a little more. So we're going to plug that reduced or simplified version of that radical back in. And when we plug it back in, we now have a fraction that has a common factor on the top and the bottom. So if we look at this, what do all 3 of these terms, this negative 4, this 2, and this 2, we won't worry about the radical, do all 3 of those have in common? Well, they can all be divided by 2. 4 divided by 2, 2 divided by 2, and again, 2 divided by 2. And let's see what that ends up getting us here. If you can imagine, yes, that -4 divided by 2. These two right here give us this. And then if I do these two right here, that's really just an imaginary 1 there. We don't need that 1 though. And so there we have our final answer of -2 plus or minus square root of 2. That is an answer choice in our packet. So we can go there, we can circle that answer and move on. But we should remember that we can always split this into 2 separate solutions, right? That plus or minus actually splits. So this is just a reminder of what those 2 individual solutions are going to be if we needed to split them a little bit further. But since it was a multiple choice question and this was one of our answer choices, we can circle this answer and we can move on. Now it is your turn to go to your packet and to solve some of those questions on your own. Good luck to you. I'll see you tomorrow. So as I was saying, this was the example that you just did right here. We now know the answer choice. And what you are now going to do is you're going to skip ahead, skip problem number 1 on that first practice set. And you're going to begin working on this question right here. What are the roots of this equation, x squared plus 4x plus 16? Please star that problem. And then when you finish that one, you can get another at bats. Go on to problem set B, and again, skip that first one in problem set B, and go right on to question number 3. Please star that one as well. That's another one that you are going to do on your own. And then once you are done, you are going to turn your attention to the exit ticket, and you will solve those problems on the exit ticket. Again, work diligently, do well, and I'll see you tomorrow.